Welcome to Your City Connections, where you get to meet entertaining and informative guests. Guests such as an artist with a brush or with a camera, and guests with a violin. City Connections, providing insightful interviews with favorite son Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb. To city commissioners, the mayor. Interviews with a rodeo queen, to beauty queen, and even a NBA player. Now, join Steve Keim as he discusses another engaging topic on City Connections.
Hello again and welcome to City Connections. I'm Steve Keim and thank you for joining us. Again, special guest comes to the Enid Television Network studios to visit with me about their past life and their current life and also the future life. My special guest today was born and raised in Enid. Graduated from Enid High School, went on to play football down at the University of Oklahoma, and then he graduated with honors and decided to do something with those honors, and then he went on to law school, and he worked a little bit for Fellowship of Christian Athletes during law school at the OU Law School, and then he became an assistant district attorney, and then after that he became the district attorney, and his jurisdiction is Blaine, Canadian, Garfield, Grant, Kingfisher, and I say all of that to introduce to you on City Connections District Attorney Mike Fields. Mike, welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the opportunity.
So, what did Enid have to do or with anything about your career choice? How in the world did you get influenced into to say, yep, I'm going to be a district attorney one of these days?
Yeah, so much. Enid has a big part to play in that. Born and raised in Enid, just have so many roots and connections here. So many people in Enid, and I could just start naming names, just were in positions of influence that were willing to invest a little in me. But more than anything, Steve, just so many people in our community, just to be examples of how to be community-oriented, service-minded people, committed to this great place and making it as great of a place as we can make it.
Well, just give us the shortened version, if you can, Mike. What in the world does a district attorney do?
Well, a district
people are
attorney,
familiar with the term,
yes, absolutely.
And they probably see it in the newspaper and stuff, but what's a DA do?
That's right. By statute, we really have our duties fall into two areas. The one is the most people are most common with or familiar with, and that is the prosecution of violations of the criminal law.
Okay.
That is the bulk of what we do. I mean, that's job one of what we do. But by statute, we also are required to provide guidance and legal assistance to all of the county officers. The county commissioners, county treasurer, county clerk, court clerk, those officers as well.
So tell us, how does this work with your jurisdiction, if I can use that word, is Blaine, Canadian, Garfield, Grant, Kingfisher County. Now, do you have an office in all of these counties? How does that work?
You know, it's difficult. It poses, being spread out over such a vast geographic area, poses some management challenges without a doubt. The entire district has a population of close to 250,000 people. It's hard to imagine. But I do my best to try and divide my time among, depending on our caseloads, kind of try and be in the counties where, in a proportionate share to the amount of cases we have from that particular county.
Very good. I remember, it may have been a year, but as fast as the calendar goes, sometimes when we say it's been a year, it's really been 3 years or something. Right. But you were involved in a case in El Reno or Yukon, and I didn't quite understand. I didn't know about all the different counties, and I go, well, why is Mike down there working? I thought he was Garfield County. So I guess, your role will call upon you to represent law, if you will, truth and justice in all these other counties. Do you make this circuit? Do you county visit each day, each week? How would somebody to understand, how does he get to all these counties?
Yeah, each week.
Okay.
Each week primarily. And the population centers of my district are Canadian and Garfield counties. And so those are the two counties that I spend the bulk of my time in. And as a percentage of our caseloads, both of those counties comprise about 40% each of our total caseload, and then 20% with the smaller counties. And so that's roughly how I spend my time, kind of 40, 40, and 20. I couldn't think of a more fair way to do it, and so that's kind of how I've tried to structure my my schedule as a general rule.
Very good. Well, Mike, as you know, from City Connections, we've had a variety of guests that always had an Enid connection, but they've left or maybe they've come home. And I've had the opportunity to visit with Ken Mendenhall and Jim Riley and some other Enid football individuals. Well, you played football at Enid High School. It was good to you. Good enough that you decided to, hey, I can go to University of Oklahoma and play football. I think they're interested in me. Tell us about high school football here at Enid as a Plainsman, and then that transition to OU.
Hey, the greatest memories I have of playing football throughout my career were at Enid High.
Okay.
And the way I've used this phrase a lot, and it's a true statement, the last time I really had fun playing football was with high school. Because once you get to the college level, you know, the stakes become so much higher. It's virtually a full-time job, and not that it's not fun, it's just not just, you know, fun for the sake of fun like it was playing for the Plainsmen. And I got to tell you, Steve, I wish I was part of that Plainsman Pro show that you had with Jim Riley and
you're
Ken
in the
Mendenhall.
neighborhood, though.
Yeah, so, but no, those guys were just at a whole nother level than I was ever graced to play at. But
and they're great inspiration for us today with the lives that they lead,
yes.
the impact that they still make on the community, but they still have such a heart for Enid.
No, that's right. And one of my first days after I'd reported to camp at OU and we'd started 2-a-day practices as a freshman, Jim Riley comes in and says,
that?
"Hey, where's the kid from Enid?"
How about that?
And so that made me feel pretty good.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, Jim played with the Dolphins, and it's just been a real treat for me to visit with him when he comes to Enid from time to time. So tell us about Gary Gibbs. What was that experience like?
Okay, the summer before my senior year of high school, which would have been 1989, a long time ago now, that was the summer that Coach Switzer resigned. And up until that point, Coach Switzer had recruited me.
Okay.
And so Coach Gibbs took over and you know, started recruiting me at that point. And so then February of 1990 was Coach Gibbs' first recruiting class.
Okay.
And I was in that first recruiting class. And a lot of people don't remember this, but 2 years that Coach Gibbs, two of his recruiting classes, and we were still on probation. So there were only 15 of us that signed that year. And all 4 years I was there, played for Coach Gibbs. And you know, the way I describe Gary Gibbs is this: he's one of the most intelligent people I've ever come across, just from an intellectual standpoint, and X's and O's, a great defensive schemer, and I enjoyed my time there playing for him. And you know, he's went on to have an outstanding career. He's still coaching in the NFL.
Sure. Every once in a while, you'll hear his name mentioned on TV.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, but you know, that was a difficult transition period in the history of Oklahoma football, and anytime following a legend is not an easy thing to do. But Coach Gibbs, his professionalism, his commitment and devotion to the job, and just like I said, that X's and O's side of things just couldn't have been any stronger than it was.
Yeah. Very good. Well, as I was reading your bio, Mike, it says that you graduated from OU at the political science degree, and then you decided to go ahead and just use that degree to move on to law school. And law school was at the University of Oklahoma, but it also says that you were involved in FCA, which is the acronym for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Tell us a little bit about your role in that.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough, talking about Enid connections and kind of the Enid roots that led to my career path. After my senior year of high school and before my freshman year of college, the athletic department would get summer jobs for all the signees. And Norman Lamb was responsible for getting my summer job. And he said, "Do you know what you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "Well, I think I may be interested in being a lawyer." And he said, "Do you know anything about lawyers?" And I said, "Nah, I really don't." And he said, "Well, I know the person you need to meet." And so he made an appointment with then District Attorney Kathy Stoker.
Okay.
And I went up and spent the summer interning with the District Attorney's office and with Kathy Stoker. And so from that point forward, I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to be a prosecutor. I thought this is about the coolest job I've ever seen. So while I was in law school to help pay the bills, I had the opportunity to work for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and just loved that time doing that, getting to invest in some high school and college kids. just to try and build relationships with them.
Sure.
And just kind of speak life into them, and just a great organization that does a lot of great work.
There's a gentleman I know real well, Chuck Bowman, who's been part of FCA along with different individuals for the longest time. And I think, Mike, for those that are close to FCA, they will say that Oklahoma has one of the strongest and most vibrant FCA huddles, if you will, all across the state compared to other states.
Yeah, that's
as
right.
well.
And it's such a great ministry that's built up so much integrity in so many people's minds, and they just do a great job with our young kids.
So you, after law school, you decide that, okay, I can move into this assistant district attorney role. Tell us a little bit about, well, what does the assistant do? And where was that at?
That was here in Enid.
Okay.
And so I was really fortunate because I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor, and ideally I would have loved to have done that in Enid. And sure enough, during my third year of law school, a position came open, and I was fortunate enough to get that position and come back to Enid and work as an assistant DA. And the way I describe my career in the DA's office over 20 years is I've handled everything from wildlife tickets to capital murder cases and everything in between.
Yeah.
So during those young years, I did a lot of those wildlife tickets, a lot of traffic tickets, and just a lot of the things that you have to do to just kind of build, to learn those little lessons, and the little lessons become big lessons eventually.
Do you ever find yourself just shaking your head saying, what were they thinking?
Yes, all the time. You know, we have a couple of different sayings. One is in the DA's office, we never have the same day twice. And the other is that we couldn't make this up if we tried, and we really couldn't. Because we're you know, when it's all said and done, we're in the people business.
Sure.
And you know, people, you know, we come from all different perspectives, and we're headed in all different directions, and we just try and find that common ground that all of us have in common with each other, and that is just this commitment to the rule of law, commitment to try and treat each other the way that we want to be treated, you know, kind of golden rule stuff.
Right. And I remember growing up in Perry, or the bigger city to the east here of Enid. But I just remember the influence that my mom had on me about making decisions. And then the older I got, the more that I enjoyed growing up in Enid. Yes, it was a small town. You got in trouble, everybody knew about it. You did something good, everybody knew about it. But that small town and the exposure to all the different people, relationships that you said, really had an impact on my life.
There's no doubt that a community of this size, with the kind of folks that we have here, it just instills a sense of accountability in all of us. Because, you know, the people I saw at church were the people I saw at school, were the people I saw out and about, and there's just, I love that. I love that about our community.
Well, the governor appointed you for a task force, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. I wanted to thank you for joining us on City Connections today. My special guest is District Attorney Mike Fields, and we'll have more with Mike right after this. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us on City Connections. My special guest today, District Attorney Mike Fields. Mike, we've talked a little bit about your upbringing in Enid, football at OU with Gary Gibbs, and why you chose, you know, law enforcement, if you will, if I could summarize that way. It's ended up kind of putting you in some, highlighted positions or something like that, because you've garnered the attention of the governor. Governor Mary Fallin has appointed you to serve on the Oklahoma Justice Reform Task Force. Tell us about this task force.
I currently serve as the president of the Oklahoma District Attorneys Association, all the DAs in the state. And so that position was one that the task force, or that the governor wanted on her criminal justice reform task force.
Okay.
And she has given us some clear marching orders as to what she expects from the task force. And that is that she wants us to try and find ways and make recommendations to her and to the legislature about ways we can make our criminal justice system more cost efficient, more effective, and better able to serve public safety.
Very good. You know, we talked a little bit earlier at the beginning of the show, the fact that, let me look at my notes, Mike goes to Blaine, Canadian, Garfield, Grant, and Kingfisher counties, and the hectic schedule for him to do that, you know, really every week. Can you give us just open the window up a little bit and just give us an insight on what a typical day looks like for a district attorney, you just mentioned moments ago, no 2 days are the same, but as somebody's looking back, especially a young person, Mike, that's watching this show, and they're thinking, I could be interested in this. Can you just kind of share with us what that typical day could be?
Great question. A typical day in the life of a prosecutor in our office begins usually long before the business day begins, and it ends sometime after that. Every one of our prosecutors in our district have anywhere from 500 to 800 cases that they're responsible for. Those caseloads are very large, and one of the things that I feel really strongly about is that those cases aren't files, those are people's lives. And the decisions that our prosecutors are making, I want them to keep that perspective in mind every single decision they make, which literally could be hundreds of decisions over the course of the day in the many files that prosecutor might touch. But a typical day would entail a prosecutor meeting with police officers to talk about a case or an arrest, and then prosecutor doing some legal research, maybe interviewing witnesses to decide whether or not there's sufficient evidence to file a charge. It could be getting prepared for a court hearing, a preliminary hearing, or even a jury trial, meeting with victims, meeting with witnesses in that particular case. And then while we're handling our caseload, we're constantly getting requests to be out in the community, to talk to community groups about certain issues that are relevant to them. And I love that role because it helps us kind of shape some of that community opinion, so that the community can kind of stay abreast of the issues that maybe they're not quite aware of, but that we've been dealing with for quite some time. Just off the top of my head, one of those is heroin. Heroin is becoming, well, it's there. It has become a huge problem. That's an issue that we were aware of long before the general public was. And so whenever we have those opportunities to get out in the community and visit, we kind of get to talk about some of those issues that we see maybe just over the horizon, that kind of put on their radar screens.
We'll talk about the impact that drugs plays in the role in your work and also criminal activity in just a moment. But you were talking just a few moments ago about your role as Governor Fallin had appointed you on that task force, but I also know that you're involved in the Garfield County Domestic Violence Task Force. Share a little bit more about that, if you would, please.
Great question. My predecessor, Kathy Stoker, started the Domestic Violence Task Force many years ago. We've continued that, and really domestic violence is one of the issues that is near and dear to my heart. And the reason I say that is because domestic violence has such a huge impact on so many aspects of our society. It impacts our business community because it takes away productivity. It impacts our children, the healthiness of families, children's ability to be successful on down the road. Obviously impacts women, the women who are directly involved. And we have lots of great organizations in our community and all across my district that really is rolling their sleeves up and getting involved in domestic violence to try and make a difference. The task force just simply tries to come alongside those groups, help them do their jobs better, help try and get the word out to raise the level of community awareness that this is an issue. It's a topic that we need to talk about. It's a topic that we need to pull out of the shadows, a topic that we need to address. And then we try and, every spring, we put on a workshop for children, young adults that have been in DHS custody for quite a period of time, and they're getting ready to age out. They're getting ready to turn 18. And we'll put on a workshop for them related to domestic violence, just so that they can have, knowledge is power. Just so that we can give them some more knowledge about healthy dating relationships, about what to look for, about how to know whether or not you're in or your relationship might be headed toward a red zone in terms of domestic violence, about the impact that domestic violence has on children, so that they know that and that they can be mindful of that. So just a lot of different things that the task force is involved in with that topic of domestic violence.
Let me ask you this. You just mentioned all these different avenues and opportunities for help or assistance to individuals. What would be the number to call? Viewers watching this show could be late at night or early morning, and they're saying, I heard all that this guy in the blue suit was talking about. but I didn't hear a phone number. Or what is what's your
YWCA. The YWCA is my recommendation. The YWCA does fantastic work. They have for a long time. They have a crisis women's shelter. In other words, if a woman finds herself in a domestic violence relationship and she's decided enough is enough, then that's the place to go. They can provide resources, help children to help make that decision to break away once and for all.
I kept hearing all of these options and assistance, but I was thinking, oh boy, I need a number or something. So the YWCA is where to go. Well, let's go back to the heroin question, if we will. Mike, in your work, I'm sure drugs has had an influence in probably 80+% of the crime. I don't know what that statistic is, and I'm sure there is a number to say of criminal activity, drugs has made this or had an influence of that criminal activity. So let's just stay close to home in Garfield County. How are we doing with the drug problem, and is it stable? Is it out of control? Or are we making headways? What can you share with us in that category?
It's a problem, as it is all across our state and all across our nation. I see every single day the devastating impact that drugs have on individuals and on families. I have those conversations with parents of children who are addicted, parents who have lost a loved one as a result of an overdose. So it impacts so much of what we do. I mean, those two issues, drugs and domestic violence, between those two, that's probably 90% of everything that we deal with in the DA's office in terms of criminal violations.
How do you, this is not on our checklist of questions, but it just occurred to me. I know you're involved in service clubs as much as you can. I know you have a family, you have a life outside of your career, but dealing with all the heaviness, and I'll just group it into heaviness that you're involved in and your staff. How do you all process that? How do you rebound to do it again another day when you really see the remnants or the results of crime and drug and stuff like that? That's got to take a toll on you. So how do you bounce back?
It does, and it's not an easy balance to keep. And as a young prosecutor, frankly, I struggled with keeping a balance. But over time and maturity, I think I've learned how to do that. Okay. Just the messiness that we deal with every single day, it's given me a greater appreciation for the good. And it makes me more sensitive and more aware to all of the great things and the great work that's going on all around us. All of the compassionate people that we see that care deeply about people and about our community and wanting this to be a great place. It just gives me a greater appreciation of that because I see so much of the other side. You know, it's kind of like when you see the opposite of what we deal with, it really stands out to you.
I think my answer to that is that it raises awareness to me how blessed I was to be in Perry, even though it was a single mom with 3 kids that she was trying to raise. How blessed I was to have that type of influence when you do that comparison game to some other stuff.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I see the evidence of grace and goodness all around us every single day in a way that I otherwise probably wouldn't.
Well, Mike, we need to talk a little bit about stolen identity in just a little bit, but we need to take a short break and we'll conclude our interview for that. But I appreciate your openness and everything. I know this has been very enlightening to everybody. Good. So, my special guest today, Mike Fields, District Attorney for, again, Blaine. Look at my notes, Canadian, Garfield, Grant, and Kingfisher counties. You'd think I'd have that committed to memory, but he's got several offices to go to. Mike Fields, some special guest on City Connections. Thank you for being with us today. We'll have a few more questions for Mike in just a moment, and we'll be right back. Hello again, I'm Steve Keim, Director of Public Relations and Marketing, and also for the Enid Television Network. We thank you for the opportunity to come into your home, really each week, and maybe too much sometimes the way people talk, but it's a real privilege to get to introduce to you in a different light Enid individuals. I just call them that way. They have a connection to Enid. They're born and raised here. Maybe they left and then they came back, but it's just a real treat to visit with these individuals. And again, my special guest, District Attorney Mike Fields. And Mike, stolen identity, is getting near to and dear to really everyone. You just can't go without a conversation without somebody saying, well, somebody got my credit card number, or somebody opened an account in my name, somebody got some account numbers off my check and went to a store and bought $3,000 worth of appliances, and now that store's calling me, and you know, that is going on. What can individuals do to protect themselves?
Great question. You know, with all of the technology advances we've seen, it's made our lives so much easier in so many ways, but it's also made it easier for criminals to steal our identities and to engage in those financial crimes. And we all know that those financial crimes have a huge impact, not only on individuals' lives, but also on our business community, because ultimately, as consumers, we're the ones that bear those costs. And so really the most important thing you can do is to be smart. You know, you hear the age-old things of not giving out personal information to sources and people that you don't know or that aren't trustworthy to you. That's a big one. Make sure that you know, we keep our PINs, you know, our personal identification numbers, make sure we keep those in secure places, that we're not you know, written on the back of a card like we all probably, or many of us were guilty of doing back you know, in the olden days. But hopefully we've come a long way since then. But even myself had my credit card stolen, my credit card number stolen, and luckily I do my banking locally. And so luckily my banker called me just within a couple of weeks and said, hey, we've seen a lot of suspicious charges on your debit card. What's going on? And I said, those aren't mine.
You're supposed to be working. What are you doing taking trips?
That's right. That's exactly right. So my point is that it can happen to all of us. I mean, someone who, I work with this every single day, and it happened to me. And I think I'm fairly careful, but it's a problem. Absolutely.
Well, it is a problem, and it's really happened to all of us. Mike, when you think back over your career, and you were sharing with us at the outset of this visit that you tried cases from wildlife to capital murder, I think is the phrase that you use. When you think back over your career, can you just kind of share with us one of the most challenging cases? And maybe you're not able to share a lot about it, but if people's watching and say, well, I wonder what was the most difficult time for Mike as a district attorney. There's a case come to mind?
Yes, actually there are a handful, and every career prosecutor, and that's the category that I'm in now, Steve. I was the new guy in the DA's office for the longest time, and now I'm the old guy. I've been there for 20 years, but as a career prosecutor for 20 years, and every career prosecutor will tell you this.
If you're the old guy, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, but every prosecutor has a handful of cases that stick with us, and every single case that we try and that we pour our heart and soul into, to do our best, to represent our community, to seek justice, to fight for justice, to be that voice for our victims that sometimes don't have a voice of their own. Those leave a mark on us. And we leave a piece of us in every single one of those cases. And for me, I've got a handful of murder cases that I've tried over the years that stick with me. I've got a couple of child abuse and sexual assault cases that at the time I had young children, and those really hit close to home with me at that time in my life. And so I just have a handful of those that I'll never forget. I'll never forget hardly anything about those. And I've handled thousands and thousands of cases, but you have those handful that you can almost remember just about everything with them or about them.
I think most of us will never get to a position that you're in. But as you were talking, I was reminded that Mike is very much human. Mike very much has emotions and feelings, and yet you're called upon to represent, excuse me, the one that can't be represented, or the one that doesn't have the voice, and how challenging it can be due to the fact that you can feel that injustice or just the crime, how challenging it is, and the emotional drain that it could be on you just to do your job.
Absolutely, and the balance that we're always trying to strike is that balance between experience and confidence in handling the case correctly, but also just a sensitivity. Even though we have dealt with maybe a countless number of victims in in that victim's particular shoes, we want to make sure that they're the only thing that matters to us.
Sure.
And sometimes that's a challenge, but that's the part of my job that I love. One of the things I love about my job, I love being able to have those conversations with victims, to be the one that gets to go into court and announce to the judge that I'm here on behalf of the people of the state of Oklahoma, and we're here to do justice. And that's what we are. As prosecutors, we're ministers of justice, and ultimately that's what we're tasked with doing.
Well, Mike, this has been a great conversation today, and I appreciate your time, knowing you've got to be in 5 places at once, it seems like sometimes. But to end our conversation, let me simply ask you this. What can we in the public, in all those counties that you represent, what can we do to help the district attorney's office out? Is there anything?
Absolutely. And I get that question a lot, and the short answer to that question is keep doing what you're doing and find ways that you can do even more of it. And by that, I mean, get involved in the community, get involved in your churches, get involved in those organizations, those nonprofits that are all around us that do amazing, great work down in the trenches, because the criminal justice system is one aspect of a larger society, and many times what we deal with in the criminal justice system are just symptoms of larger societal problems. And so if we can effectively address those larger societal problems, then we're going to have a positive impact ultimately on public safety, on the criminal justice system. So that's my answer. Get involved in the community. Do more of what so many people around us are already doing. Lots of needs all around us. Lots of places for us to roll up our sleeves and get involved in people's lives, trying to help folks.
Very good. Well, you've challenged us to do so, and we'll keep on doing what we're doing. It's been a real treat, Mike. Thank you so much for being here today on City Connections. And I told you were special, okay? And we try to treat all of our guests special, but Enid turned 123 years old a couple of weeks ago, and want to present you from the city of Enid commemorative coin, if you will, a challenge coin. And I don't think you have those because it's brand new. And if you have one, then that's stolen identity. Then you got it before me. But anyway, that's our way to say thanks for coming to the Enid Television Network studios today.
Thanks for the invitation. Certainly appreciate it, Stephen. Thanks for all you guys do.
All right, you're welcome. Well, special guest on City Connections, District Attorney Mike Fields, and we look forward to Mike will come back and give us an update on things, on how we can help as citizens, how we can help that District Attorney's office. Well, again, thank you for joining us on City Connections. It's my privilege, to share with you just the insights on these special guests that we have every week. So until next time, make it a great day. I'm Steve Keim. Thank you for joining us.